What's up there, YouTubers and fellow riders? The Chemis back at it again in the garage, cooking up another DIY for you. And I just, as you saw, I just finished putting in my motor, and I kind of wanted to bring you some how-tos, some lesson learns, and some good takeaways to installing your own motor. And so before I do any major project, I kind of like to give you guys the tools and ideas that you need to kind of ponder before actually completing the job to make it a successful mission. So what I have here in front of me are the only set of tools that you're basically going to need, besides Phillips head and minor stuff like that, screwdriver, whatnot. But this is what you actually need in order to get your motor out. And you know, a lot of times I teach you guys how to make your own stuff, make your own tools. And in this instance, you know, I really didn't want to go ahead and try and make something that wasn't going to fit, because I was kind of in a crunch. I needed to get my motor out quickly, and I actually completed it in a whole entire weekend, so that was pretty good. Started on Friday night, ended up finishing it on Sunday afternoon. So it was a good install, and as you saw, the motor started right up from the get-go. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So what you need to actually remove the castle nuts that hold in your engine, and it's a specialty tool, and Motion Pro sells this. It's the spanner nut socket tool, and this is actually a great tool, I want to say, because it gives you a kind of like a two-in-one. And I didn't know this upon purchasing it, but this actually fits the castle nuts that hold in the engine or mounts up to the engine, and this is also a tool so that it'll remove your sprocket. So it's a two-in-one type of deal. And if you guys have seen this and didn't know what it was, I didn't know for myself that this was actually that it had two functions. So basically, you just stick in your extension down into there on either side, and you can get a ratchet on there. So good tool to have, and I definitely recommend that you buy this. This is the Motion Pro spanner nut socket tool, and the number here is 08-0568 for those of you looking to do your change on your 04-05 Suzuki GSXR 750. Another tool I had to go out and buy, and that's because the bolts that I was trying to reach, I didn't have nothing long enough or anything sturdy enough to get down into there and to remove the bolts where the frame sliders are at. And I had to go out and get myself another set of tools, because the tools that I were using just either wouldn't reach or wouldn't stand up to the amount of force I needed to crack them bolts. So this is a 8mm Allen head, and so I highly recommend you get a nice one with a good long extension on it, and that's going to help you out. And I'll show you in a little bit to where you're going to be using these tools at. Another tool here is my 9/16 socket. You need this to actually remove the two bolts that go into the engine mounts. So something else here, and I believe this is a 6 metric Allen, and you need this to remove another nut. So altogether, you're removing 6 bolts altogether off the engine, and that drops down the engine, so to speak. So let me go ahead and push pause, and I'll move you over to the bike and show you how I started my venture. Before you guys get started removing anything from the bike, I mean, besides your plastics and your fairings and whatnot, I always do this, and it's a great habit to start. You want to make sure every time you remove a piece somewhere that you tag it. So like this is injectors, so we got, you got 4 injectors, and I labeled them each one 1, 2, 3, 4 as we went down, because this is cylinder number 1 moving all the way down to 4. Okay, also when you're removing stuff like the fuel lines, you want to make sure you connect everything back and that you don't miss out nothing on anything. So it's a good habit to start tagging and labeling everything. So like right here we said, I usually number everything in order as I take it off, you know, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and I just do the corresponding end of it. So if this is a 1, that's going to be a 1. I move on to my next one, that's going to be a 2, that's going to be a 2, and so forth. And you want to make sure that every time you disconnect something, you go ahead and tag it and label it so that installation is really quick and easy. And to tell you the truth, I think I connected everything up here in a matter of 30 minutes because I had a good labeling process. And as you can see, we can go all the way up in there, even down to my hoses. I went ahead and labeled the tank up there. You can see 1 2 3, and for my hoses the same thing, 1 2 3. Everything went in with such a breeze. It was amazing. So I highly recommend, if you're doing the engine change, or if you actually ever removing any harnesses or connectors and the whole entire harness out, that you go ahead and label everything. That's going to help you out greatly. Go ahead and talk about what bolts you actually need to remove in order to drop your engine. Okay, so on the left side of the bike, as you can see, we have one bolt here, and it's way down in there. I'm sure you can't see it with no light. And you have another one, and let me see if I get closer. Right there, that bolt right there. Once you pull back this fairing, you have a bolt down here, and you might be able to see it right there in this hole right here. There's another one, that's an Allen head. To remove these frame bolts, you are going to use your 8mm Allen. Okay, so as you can see, I can't get to that one right here, but the reason why I bought this was because I didn't have one long enough to reach down inside there. So you're gonna go ahead and, like I said, purchase you a good length one. I do have a set of hand tools, but like I said, I didn't want to go ahead and rip that handle off. This thing was cranked on here so tight that I just was not able to do it without a ratchet and a breaker bar. So it was amazing how tight this was. But for here, 8mm. On this end over here, you're either going to use your 9/8 socket. Did I say 9/8? I'm sorry, 9/16 socket, or the equivalent 14mm. Okay, and that goes in here and right there. So to loosen that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the other side. All right, so back at the other side, like I told you, you're going to use your 6mm Allen to go ahead and loosen this pinch bolt, and then you're going to use your 8 to get that that last bolt out of there. Now, when we move over to the castle nuts, now on the right side of the bike are your castle nuts right there, and that's where the spanner tool comes in place. You need to get that nut. Once you take off this bolt, you need this tool to mate up to that castle nut to spin it off. Now you have 2 castle nuts. You have one up here and you have one down in there. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see this because it's kind of dark, but you have one down there. 2 castle nuts. This tool takes off both of them. This tool does not fit your swing arm, so just to let you know, the swing arm bolt is a lot bigger, and so you would need to purchase another one if you were ever And as you can see here, this is the engine right here, and right next to it, if you can see that crack right here, this is the thrust bolt, this small piece right here. This is actually like a pinch mount, so you kind of unscrew it counterclockwise and it relieves pressure off of here. It's not tight by any means because it wasn't meant to be tight. It's just meant to keep vibration from the motor moving back and forth. Okay, so this sucker is a bitch to get off. Okay, and there is no tool that is provided, and you kind of have to do it on your own. So you have to spin this back counterclockwise like you're relieving any bolt. And what I recommend is you go ahead and get a chisel or a hammer and push it back and chisel it back, because it's actually fully round. It's a rounded head. And I went ahead and I modified this bolt for any future removals that I might have or might need. And I'll go ahead and show you pictures of that right now. But this sucker is hard to get out. If you do not back this out, you will struggle to get your engine out of your bike. So that is just an FYI for you, a very helpful tip. It took me literally 3 hours to figure out how to get this bolt back. And I didn't want to go ahead, and since it is an aluminum bolt, and be very careful. If you bend it or you mess up one of the teeth on the threads, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. So be very cautious when you're trying to back this bolt out. It will stick out a little bit from here. Do not attempt to grab a pair of pliers and grab it and try and twist it in the counterclockwise position, because this will only lead to you stripping the thread. Okay, so I made that mistake, and I won't do it again. Lesson learned, and I'm trying to save you guys the headache and hassle yourself. So again, you have two of these thrust bolts, and they have to be, let me see if I can zoom in on it for you. All right, there's a better picture of the thrust bolt. You have to back both of them out, so the one's on top of each other. So let me back this out. Okay, so you got one thrust bolt here and another thrust bolt there. You need to twist it in the counterclockwise position and give yourself some wiggle room. Now before you go ahead and loosen that, you want to make sure that you have the engine supported with a jack or a jack stand or something, because once that comes out, that engine is going to fall down. Okay, so after, well, actually, once you back it out, the engine will still stay in place because you still have the bolt in place here holding everything together. My recommendation is you go ahead and you loosen everything and take out all the bolts, remove, back out your thrust bolt, and then just continue to leave these in here until you get all your mounts out of place. Once you're done removing, getting all the bolts off your mount, you are going to go ahead and remove one at a time. You remove the top one, let the engine kick down at a little bit at an angle, and then you go ahead and pull out the other one. Now when you pull them out, you're going to want to pull them out from this side, okay, because this is where they're easy accessible. So you're going to grab this bolt, slide the whole entire thing out. Same thing for this one, slide the whole entire thing out, and once you release the pressure off those thrust bolts, the engine should just drop. Okay, so dropping the engine wasn't an issue. It was getting it back in that was an actual issue. But when you drop the engine, I recommend, I didn't need to take off the front wheel, but when you're installing the motor, I recommend that you do remove the front wheel and put it up on a stand. It makes things a whole lot easier. You will find that when the motor rises up, it will get stuck on the wheel and actually start pushing your wheel forward as you jack up the motor and the motor rises up. It is definitely going to hit your tire and push the tire in as it rolls up. Now once it rolls up past that point, it's a great actually the tire helps out a great deal, because now the motor rests on it, so it has its pros and it has its cons. So but I did struggle to get the motor up into place, just because of the fact of the tire. Okay, so let's get into removing things that need to be removed off the bike. Of course, you need to connect and disconnect everything out from in here, and your wiring harness must be completely free and moving about in here. Of course, you need to remove the stacks. You need to take out, of course, the air filter, and you need to remove the stacks and remove those completely out. And while they're out, I do recommend that you take the time and clean them out. You're also going to need to remove the air reed valve right there, which is mounted to the bike via that rod. So you remove that and all its hosings. Like I said, make sure when you disconnect everything, you want to go ahead, tag and label it so that you have an easy installation. Okay, so once all this is removed, and you're also going to remove your gas tank, make sure everything is completely out of the way and you're able to work freely. Okay, another thing that you are going to need to remove is your linkage here, and you're also going to have to take off this cover, remove the speed sensor, and behind the cover, if you don't know, is your sprocket. And your sprocket is connected to your chain, of course. And in order to get off that sprocket, that's where the Motion Pro's specialty tool comes into play. Now, I had a hell of a time trying to get mine off, and that's simply because I blew the gears inside here, and I did not have any traction when it came to the sprocket trying to grab onto something. My gears wouldn't lock into place, and so it was essentially in neutral, and that was a pain in the ass. But if you're using the Motion Pro tool, you're going to use a smaller end, put it over the pickup sensor, which is located in this area right here, and I'll see if I can show you a picture of that right now. And you're going to go ahead and loosen that. You're going to put it in a gear so it doesn't spin on you, and you're going to go ahead and crack that bolt off. And don't attempt to, it will have an Allen head on it like this, and then you're going to have your pickup sprocket. Just go ahead and put this over that Allen head bolt and into the pickup, and go ahead and crank it off. You don't need to stick a tool in here, it will automatically loosen on its own. So and then you're also gonna have to remove your chain. So of course you're gonna need to loosen your back tire and slide it forward and roll off your chain so that you're able to remove the chain from the sprocket and the spindle. So good thing to note right there. A few other things that you're going to remove, and they're all exterior stuff, and that's, of course, you're going to have to remove the radiator, and there's only 3 bolts. There's one bolt down here which connects to the engine, and I'm not sure if you can quite see that right there, that little rod that kind of goes down to the radiator. Let's see if I can zoom in on that for you right there. So you're going to need to remove that little metal bracketry right there, and of course you're going to need to remove the exhaust. You just remove loosen all your bolts up there, and you're going to move around to the other side, and you're going to remove this bolt and that bolt, and your exhaust should just drop off. So remove all your hoses. So I recommend that if you are reusing the same hoses and whatnot, you go ahead and tag the hoses as well with some blue tape, and then go ahead and write where it went to, where and what it connected to. Oftentimes, you know, it's a big project and you're going to forget a lot of things when you're pulling them off, and it's a great habit to start tagging. I cannot express how much this helps you out in doing this job. So something I wanted to point out when I was installing this, and I was almost completely done, and which didn't prevent the bike from starting, but the bike actually did start, and but it was kind of misfiring in a odd manner, and every time I gave it gas it would bog out. Now you got to remember, this is your secondary TPS, and down there is your primary. They are essentially the same part, and so this connector will plug up to that connector. You got to remember that this connector is black, and that goes to your secondary throttle position sensor. The one behind there is gray, and don't get them confused. It won't do nothing, no harm to the bike. The bike will start up and run, but it'll run like shit. So make sure that you connect them up exactly like this: gray down there, black up here, and that will save you a world of trouble. You end up thinking that you bought a bogus motor, so and it won't run right. Another thing you want to remember is that when your bike comes, it comes completely empty with no fluids inside of it. You want to make sure that you go ahead and you replenish the oil. This is going to take 4 quarts of oil, maybe, yeah, probably about 4 full quarts of oil in order to fill this up. Okay, so don't think that you're going to go down to your local O'Reilly store and pick up 3 quarts and you're going to be done. No, it's going to take about 4, maybe even 4.5. So make sure that you do go ahead and get yourself enough oil to cover that. When you're refilling up your radiator, you want to make sure you fill your radiator up all the way up to the top of the spigot up here. And then once you cap it off, you want to go ahead and fill up the reservoir here to its mark. And it's marked not on this side, but on the inside. And let me see if I can show you that marking right now. All right, so I got to kind of hold the camera at an angle, but as you can see, you have a high and a low spot. You want to fill it up probably about to almost at the high spot right there. And make sure that you use a 50-50 mixture of antifreeze, and so you don't have to go ahead and try and add the water in yourself. Okay, so when you're reinstalling your motor, you didn't need to take off the rear tire when you were taking the engine out, but you may need to take it off when you are putting it back in. And that's for the simple fact that once you get your motor in place and your bolts back in there, everything's being held up, and you want to put your sprocket back on, it is a bitch to get this chain back on without the rear tire being off, so you're able to finagle it over the teeth of the sprocket. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and you remove the back tire. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of time just removing the back tire and doing it this manner than it would trying to get that chain over that sprocket, or even the spindle that's coming out, which the sprocket mounts onto. So that is going to be a helpful tip right there. I was trying not to remove the rear wheel, but in the end it ended up beating me, and I needed to make sure that it came off in order to get it on. So again, upon installation, it may benefit you, if you do have the stand for it, to go ahead and remove that front wheel, and in order to get that engine up. What I used was my normal jack, and my normal jack just like that, and I got me a dolly, which I picked up from Harbor Freight, and I'll show you some pictures right here of what it looks like. It is the smallest dolly that they possibly sell. It will support the weight of the engine. By the way, the engine weighs about 145 to 150 pounds. It is very easy to move around, and you know, it's not too difficult, but to maneuver. But you want to make sure that you pick yourself up a good dolly that has casters that spin all the way around 360 in order to help you finagle the engine in place, and use your jack in order to raise it up. And I will show you all this in the video to come. So I just want to kind of go over these important pieces to help you be successful in getting in your engine. Alright guys, so that concludes this portion of the video. I hope I gave you a lot of good information to help you out with your successful removal and installation of your motor. And be on the lookout for the next video where I actually show you the footage of me removing and installing the motor. And yeah, so as always guys, don't forget to hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell for my updates. And if you're feeling generous, of course, the donation link is always below. And don't be afraid to go ahead and reach out to me if you need some helpful tips. But as always, I will see you next problem.